yeah, I'm feeling our shared passion for circling coaching, how much we love going on these individual journeys with people that we work with, and how magical it is for us on many levels.
Yeah. Yeah, as you say that, it actually takes me back to the beginning of seeing someone circling for the first time and just being like, what is that? That's so intuitively how I want to be, not quite knowing what was going on, but knowing that it was amazing, and like falling in love kind of right from the beginning. And then just how wonderful it's been to learn how to embody that way of being. And then like how transformational circling has just always been for me. And just every single time experiencing new levels of experience. And then that I get to now offer that as a service to others in this way, in this context of coaching, is really wonderful.
Yeah, because it's like in learning circling initially, I mean, we were already coaches, and then we came across circling, and it was really just like you described. We suddenly witnessed this magic of like, what is going on? They're not coaching, but it seems more powerful than the coaching. What are they doing? and then so learning circling and like getting the distinctions that make it absolutely not coaching, and seeing how transformational that's been, and obviously, dedicating our lives to it. But then also still having a love for coaching, and gradually like bringing the insights of circling into our coaching. And then now feeling like we've established something called circling coaching, which is bringing the best of circling into a coaching format.
Yeah. And I'm just like tuning into the essence of circling now, and just, I've just realized that the first thing I said, although it felt true, there was some way that maybe I was rushing a little, or not quite feeling the whole of me as I was speaking. And then just through circling, learning that that's totally okay, even though it may seem not okay in the first realization of it. And just being okay with that now, and revealing it and experiencing it, and trusting that that's going to inspire a deeper connection, or reveal a deeper connection in me right now.
Yeah, I got this massive relaxation when you shared that. That reminds me of often, like when I come into a circling context, I get this peace and this joy of like, oh yeah, this is this place where we can just share what's actually going on, and even if it's uncomfortable or vulnerable, and like it's about us just getting a shared sense of what's really going on for each other, and the kind of emergence that comes out of that, like the letting go of a certain way of being in the world, and entering into this other place of curiosity and wonder and innocence, and revealing what's really happening, and capturing as things emerge in us, like, yeah, oh, this is actually what's happening now, and I thought we were going in this direction, but now this is here. And feeling that, it was like, oh yeah, already I can feel how useful that could be in a coaching container of like, oh, it could help, like revealing ourselves could help someone to feel at ease, or feel safe in some way, or feel that invitation to like, oh, I can share myself here. I can go deep and really go into tender territory in this place.
Yeah, that reminds me of a recent coaching session I did actually this week, where I actually noticed that the client I was with was really vulnerable, and it was territory that was familiar to me, and there was a lot of trust with me and this client already established. And I noticed myself I caught myself actually in a mode of like I know, or like being at total ease, but just actually a slight sense of losing connection to my vulnerability in my equivalent kind of struggle to what she was in, if that makes sense. So so it was like, so in that moment I was like, actually I just have to remember only an hour ago at what my experience was like, and I wasn't at this level of ease, and I wasn't planning to do this. This isn't something I do normally. It's just what I found myself doing, and actually that allowed me to show up more with her around like my own struggle. And I still had this kind of ease with the territory we're in, but I felt like I came in more real. And then the session seemed to go on a whole new trajectory as I brought that in. And I think that's so refreshing. That's always been refreshing for me, but I think it's refreshing for clients to be in a practice where the leader suddenly doesn't know everything.
Right.
And I worked with some amazing leaders over the years, and in their modality, it is like they have all the answers, and it seems like they're amazing because they can always answer your inquiries. But actually, I've also seen every leader I've ever known, when you take them out of their comfort zone, they're just as human as anyone else. And there's something about circling coaching where we really get to be that real. And actually that serves the transformational process that we're in.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of coaching calls I did yesterday and today that were kind of extremes in a way, but maybe there was a common thread. Like yesterday, I just felt like I had such a clear idea of what was going on in the client and was able to really guide her and support her through a profound process. And I was totally there with her, and I was like on a horizontal with her, as I like to call it. Like there was no sense of me in this abstract role or like somehow being better than her, but there was an expertise that I developed that could really serve her. And I felt confident in the way that I could kind of lead her and offer reflections about what was happening in her. And they all just landed really well. And it was a beautiful session. And then in the session today with someone else, he started sharing about some themes around like getting trapped on his phone and like wanting to hide from the world. And that theme's something that's quite up for me at the moment, like just this week. And that often doesn't seem a coincidence. Like often we seem to attract clients who are exploring certain things than we are. But today I did a similar share of just like not dropping the role of the coach, not dropping the idea that I'm fully here for him and we're here in service of you, but including like, just the honesty of like, I'm curious about what you're going to say next about this, because I don't have an answer to this. Like I can feel that I'm holding my own version of this a little bit different to you. And his response was like real curiosity about how I was holding it and about how it showed up for me. And from there, I don't remember exactly where it went from there, but it did seem to enter new territory and just felt really nourishing for both of us. Like it didn't lose any of the quality of like me being the coach for him, but it also allowed for a richer human connection and different things to come up that as a result of that kind of revealing of where I was at.
Yeah. And when you say you say it really simply and clear, and then at the same time there is a nuance we develop as circling coaches, circling leaders, because you could be with a client and start sharing, your struggles with phones or whatever it is, in a way that would totally send the session into a strange place, and the client might be like, why am I here if you're, and it's the way you're sharing that has the impact.
Right.
I wonder if you want to say more about that.
Yeah, and I think like a rule of thumb for me is like just being mindful of sharing anything to do with my own process, like maybe checking with them, like, would you like to hear about this? Because knowing it can be really useful, and then knowing, it could just be a distraction. So I think the leadership on our part is not needing to share these things, but actually daring to share them, or like knowing that sometimes sharing them we might not know exactly what it's going to lead to, but that it does seem to take us to places that are less like pre-planned and more emergent in nature, and that we can be graced with something new as we do kind of show our own innocence around the themes, and our own innocence about what's even happening for us as the coach in the session. Like in that way, we're actually we're still kind of circling in a way, because we're believing in connection as the most important thing, and truth as the most important thing.
Yeah, there's it helped me as you're speaking see that in essence the circling, we're always bringing our awareness to what's happening and seeing if we can develop a deeper trust or surrender or compassion for what's in us or what's in someone else. And that, when I say it, that can sound quite easy, but then if you're in a session with someone and you're actually feeling like you don't know what's happening, and the last few things you said in the session felt like they actually weren't helping, like what the client's wanting. So in that moment, that's when you're really challenged to the practice of like, can I be fully okay or able to feel and be with, but I don't know if I'm helping. I don't know how the client's going to react to me saying that. But it is the truth. And the move's actually like sharing that in service of the inquiry, or in service of developing this acceptance of what's happening. When that happens, that's when I think the magic happens. It's like, I'm just sharing like, oh, I don't know if this is really helping right now, but I'm not sharing it as like I'm confessing something that's wrong. It's
Right.
more I'm sharing it because I trust in reality. I trust in truth, and that's the kind of ace move, or the unique move is a better way to say it, of circling.
Yeah, and the leap of faith involved in that.
Yeah. And what I find continually is that my practice deepens. It's like it's more and more refined, or it keeps just being vulnerable. It happened with a client just yesterday. It was quite a sweet moment actually, but a little awkward at first. That he he shared that he'd signed up for doing a course with another leader, and he said he didn't know why, but he felt like he was almost like cheating on me. He said it was quite a brave but quite a fun share he did. And I actually took a moment with it, and I saw that there was just the slightest like fear in me that if I was honest about this leader, that in some way that might make him less confident in my coaching. It was like a vulnerable little fear. And then when I was okay with, as I brought my kind of an okayness to that, it just was very clear to me that I actually really liked this leader that he was going to, and I could just share really honestly why I liked him, but be very specific, not kind of give away my power in any kind of way, but yeah, I like him for this very reason. And then it emerged that I also, there was one part which I felt like wasn't quite as potent as circling, and I could be honest about that. And then the connection we had after that was, yeah, very enriched. And yeah, it felt like a kind of, that really kind of served my development as the coach as well as him.
I'm also thinking of like the range of like how different our coaching sessions can be. And like talking of connection in this way, it could give people the impression of like as being a bit nice and like cozy with clients. And like, I'm also thinking of how confronting I'm willing to be of people and how much challenge I'm willing to bring. But more just like, I mean, I'm about to start this circling coaching training in 4 days' time. So I've been working on the curriculum and planning it out for the last few months. And it's been really interesting coaching at the same time of that, because I have all these ideas about circling coaching now. And then I get into my coaching session, and sometimes it's like, they're kind of affirmed, and it's almost like textbook and just goes amazing. And then like the next session, I'm having to throw all that stuff out and like really just be in this fresh new moment with them, and like trying to work out what's happening. Like, is this something that's really personal to me that's going on that's not really of use, or and the vulnerability of that. Like I still have like, I have some really vulnerable coaching sessions, but I'm grateful for that as well, and like the learning that comes through it, the ongoing inquiry into what is good coaching and what is happening in me, and yeah, what is for my growth, and what is actually a really complex interconnection between me and the client that we can co-explore in a beautiful way.
Yeah. It reminds me of what there's something very important about developing as a coach, and something that we've talked a lot about in creating a training for people to develop their coaching, and that's like our kind of unique gifts, or like what's most aligned and alive for us as coaches, and how that's our offering to the client. So yeah, for me, I've always just loved the kind of pure meditative embodied kind of showing up part of circling, but then my particular personal journey has been going into very deep kind of ways my body has responded to traumatic experiences in my past, and how that shows up in my life now. And it's been a very difficult exploration, and especially showing up with physical symptoms and illness sometimes, and and that being really challenging, but that also kind of brought out this new awareness and new practice of meeting these parts of me, and been doing that very meditatively actually, and a lot of stillness. And so life has sort of gave me this challenge, or this truth I've been compelled to face, and then through that my practice is developed in a certain way, like, and I notice my sessions now very much reflect that, like my ability to see where people are resisting the deeper level of sensation they're experiencing, but at the same time that resistance isn't the problem. It's intimately interconnected with the sensation they're avoiding, or it's revealing their deeper relationship to themselves. So that's just come through this period for me, this deeper understanding, and that's now what I uniquely offer to clients in the session, or that's what a lot of what comes through. And I imagine that's very different to how your sessions are looking right now, or there must be some parallels, but I think someone could be an amazing circling coach and they're not really doing that much specific thing of like helping people navigate difficult past traumatic experiences, not directly anyway. I wonder if that's making sense, because there was a lot of pieces there.
Yeah, it is making sense, and I relate to it, and then I'm also wonder where I don't relate to it, or where things occur differently for me.
Well, I could add, because the thing that, again, like when we were talking about this training, this thing I'm talking about is very much how we've related to each other, of like, you've gone very deep into what is it that is circling coaching for you, and what's most aligned and alive, and then trusting that and going with it, and then interacting with me and others, and that's brought out this kind of emergent structure. Like, you didn't know how it was going to look until it kind of was being created. And then the same for me. I like, you didn't tell me, oh, can you do this? It was like, yeah, what's emerging in you? And then I've been in a similar process, and what's emerged in me is definitely one very important part, is this, how I've learned to integrate the kind of trauma, specific trauma mode. I don't know if calling it trauma modality is a good thing, but approaches that really want to work with supporting people with their trauma, and so we've both done a lot of training on that, on therapeutic approaches to trauma embodied approaches. But then when you're circling, like, how do you bring that kind of knowledge and awareness into a circling context and into a coaching context? That's the thing that's really lit me up, and that's, so that's what I'll be bringing in the course, and we'll be looking at lots of important different ways of navigating it. So there's the kind of developmental trauma aspect, which is how we over a whole kind of childhood slowly developed a survival way of dealing with our, especially our primary relationships, how we've dealt with not quite getting our primary needs fully met, and how we adapted, and then we've carried on adapting that way, kind of unconsciously, and we can learn to go beyond that. So that's all good knowledge, but then how do you integrate that into this present moment exploration as a coach?
Or as a circler?
Yeah. And that's where we've been doing that now we've been doing it since the beginning, because we were always passionate about learning about how people respond to deeper pain and difficult experiences, and we always known it's been coming up in circling. But then the last 5 years, especially as we've done more trainings, we've just been really, like, we call it cross-paradigmatic, crossing paradigms, and it's quite an art to do that when you're coaching, because you can easily, you can learn something about trauma, and then you can actually slip into a therapeutic way of meeting the coach, or you can even learn something different, say around aliveness and embodiment, but you slip into being a teacher of that practice more than you're in circling coaching. So a lot of the training will be practicing like how you hold these different paradigms and how you can integrate them in a kind of fluid, deeper trust.
Yeah, and that's my journey with it the last 3 or 4 years. It has been very fluid and relatively easy to integrate for me into circling and both coaching. What I've loved is like the wisdom that we've gained, particularly from NAM, but also other trainings. It's just added to our circling. It hasn't meant that we've had to change anything in circling or suddenly think the circling paradigm isn't good enough or something. It's more just like showed us how we can circle better. And it's the same with the coaching for me. It's just informed me of deeper layers of the psyche and like getting more to the causal dynamics of what's really happening around someone's coaching topic or their particular struggle. So at the moment, I feel quite fluid between the paradigms, where I can kind of honor the individual paradigms and kind of move between them and take the goods from all the different paradigms. And it's very satisfying.
Yeah, and it could be quite an experience sometimes of being in a session and then suddenly feels like I'm channeling one of my mentors and one moment, and then I'm back into kind of what feels like pure circling, and then but it just feels like it emerges very fluidly. But at the same time, anytime I'm concerned about maybe I actually, though that was actually true this week again, there was one session where I was like, I didn't know if I was circling or not in this moment, and it was a vulnerable moment, and then it's something that hasn't happened to me, but I can't remember the last time it happened to me. I suddenly felt like I couldn't circle. It was like I didn't know how to get back on track, and so I was just there like, what is going on, like, and then, but what was actually happening was I was just getting these like clear seeings that have come through this kind of approach I've been doing of like meditating into the kind of deeper trauma or deeper feelings that we call trauma. Maybe I can say something about that later, but and then I was just getting these clear insights, and that's actually just what wanted to happen through me. But there was also just a slight uncertainty in me of like, oh, but I couldn't circle, or I somehow couldn't find that magic. then afterwards, it just came to me just really clear that even though that session went well, I think because I just trusted that's where I was, but I was still a bit afterwards like, yeah, but what was going on? And then it just occurred to me like, oh, I could have just shared that I was in that dilemma. And that would have been circling because that's where I was. And then, the next session I did, that actually, well, it was a bit further on than that. I got to share something like that, and it was a beautiful, I just got a sense of how I was just circling, just in that free flowing way. And then all the kind of knowledge I've learned over the last few years was just coming in, just through the circling very effortlessly.
Yeah.
It's funny how, one session can feel difficult, and then suddenly that you have like what feels like the most flowing session you've had for a while, the very next one, and that won't say anything about what the next one's going to be like.
Right. It makes me think of when I did put out, when I first made it public that I was going to do this circling coaching training, and that it was going to be centered around this idea of wholeness. It was like after I put that out to the universe that I feel like there's something I have to share around this, I got like the biggest ass kicking for a week of like all the places in me where I don't feel whole, or where it's really hard for me to remember where I'm whole, and like all this fear of rejection came up. And like in my mind, I've got the idea of like, I can only reject myself. I can only reject myself. If I'm rejecting myself, it's because I'm like, it's serving me in some other way, or like all this stuff. But the embodiment of it in me was so terrifying and so all encompassing in a way. And but I seem to find my way out of it, and I still seem confident and excited by this theme of wholeness, of like how central it is for me in my life, in my leadership, in my coaching, in my circling.
Like, I wonder, just with just hearing that, if it was anything like you stepped into a more truthful identity of like, okay, I believe in wholeness, and I'm actually going to step into the world stronger, and like offer like this training that's based on this idea and this embodiment of wholeness. And so that was like a you stepping into more of yourself. And then by doing that, that then reveals like the places that aren't quite there yet, or where the parts of you that don't feel whole yet. And in that way, when they came up, because you weren't like rejecting that, even though you maybe were, because that always happens at first. You see your resistance, but by being with the resistance and then being with the parts that didn't feel whole, they inevitably become whole because you're including them. They're like becoming conscious and not being rejected now. I wonder if it may have been something like that.
Yeah, that's my thinking around it. And like when you talk about wholeness and about like, I still feel like I have so little understanding of it, and yet it's so fundamental to me, because there's this like, and I do think it's wrapped up in paradox. It's like, because those parts that don't feel whole, you can still be whole in feeling your lack of wholeness. Like in a way, there's that view.
Yeah.
And then that's where wholeness becomes more like a faith or a practice for me, of like, yeah, reality seems to have revealed this idea that we are whole to me. And yeah, certain moments it's incredibly difficult to embody that and remember that, but then there's kind of a faith or...
Well, it's amazing. It reminds me when you told me that that was going to be a leading theme for the course. My first reaction was like, wholeness. I don't really like that as a concept, and then I struggled with it for a little bit, and like, oh, should I distance a bit more from the course then if I'm not really into that theme, even though I can link it to surrender and presence and things that resonate more. But then an interesting thing happened a few days later. Talking with my partner, I just suddenly just seemed clear that what she was expressing was like something about wholeness. And I was like, oh no, is it like, it just seems so clear that I liked that frame suddenly. And then at first I was like, oh, am I just doing that to please John, or what's going on? Or is it just because I want to be part of the coaching? But then just suddenly it just started appearing in lots of different places. And then it just started to really resonate with like this understanding I've been getting about how we really can integrate traumatic experiences. And in one way, what's happening when we have this overwhelming experience, and this is where I want to just give a little bit more context, because I do think it's quite a unique approach that we'll be exploring with integrating trauma, because I do feel like I'm moving a little bit. I still really love what I learned through NAM, but there's another understanding I'm getting, which is maybe just slightly different, but seems to take me into deeper territory. And it links to wholeness. We have this experience where we feel some harm, and then we respond to that harm with what is usually like a nervous system response. So we freeze, or we flight, or fight. And what that seems to do is to separate a part of us, a sensation we're experiencing that then is kind of in the shadow, or like we're not consciously aware of it anymore. And then, but it's more than that, that in the future, like if I'm in a situation that triggers that sensation, what I'll experience is this freeze, or this distancing, or I might vanish a little bit or something, and then I get this habitual thing where I'm like, say I've got to do public speaking, I just go into this kind of vanished state, and I can't do it so well. But actually, what I've come to discover is that the vanishing isn't really the trauma, or it's not the whole trauma. It's just it's only the kind of the first part of it, because that dissociation, or that freeze, is actually suppressing the original harm and the original sensation around that harm. So maybe I got, shamed when I tried to speak up in my family or something, and then the pain of that shaming gets dissociated away, but also the sensation of like, I want to speak my truth and I want to be myself also gets suppressed. So then every time I'm in a situation where I get the chance to be myself and speak up, that natural sensation that guides me and shows me how to be myself in that situation is being suppressed. So then I don't feel whole. I feel frozen or half there, and I don't have my full intelligence. And that's because the traumatic experience is still not resolved. So so the sensation's not available in the way it would be. So in this way, it's like a wholeness can be kind of it can almost feel a bit like esoteric, like it's kind of an elusive concept. Like oh, I'm kind of whole with the universe, but like, what does that mean? But I think there is a way to understand it just very bodily, as it's when we're feeling our natural sensations and they're not being suppressed. And, you know, when we get hungry, we eat. When we want someone close, we feel the sensation of, I want you close. And then we ask then we just ask from that sensation, and people respond because it's the natural sensation. And then things are just easy because it's coming from the body. And so I think when we're in touch with our bodies like that, we have this sense of wholeness. And yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in. And yeah, that's the kind of territory we're going to be exploring.
I wonder a few things. I wonder if you want to say more on that. And I was also wondering if that is alive in you in some way right now, like as we're recording this conversation.
Yeah, that's well, I think just at the end, maybe you could pick that up. I think the little fear came in that I was talking, because I was talking for a bit longer, that it was getting harder to follow. So that came in, and maybe that's where it was. I think that was because I was feeling more passion, and more like, this really touches me and matters to me, and it's really what I want to share with others. So yeah, maybe that fear came in to kind of try to protect me from showing up fully. And now I can feel the sensation now, like there's a pressure in my ribs, and can feel that like pulling in. There's something nice about your invitation, because I get to feel it now. And I think, yeah, what I would say more as I'm feeling this is it's like this kind of awareness. We want to go even slower. I think it's what I'm sensing is where, as a coach, you can go very far with the practice of circling, just having a kind of faith and an understanding of, like, if I trust experience, if I trust myself, if I trust what the client's saying, even if it doesn't seem logical or seems to be counterproductive to what they want, I can trust that there's something deeper going on, and we'll discover that, and it will make sense of why this thing is stuck at the moment or painful at the moment. And in discovering that, we're gonna be rewarded for our trust, or we're gonna feel a deeper connection and this wonderful sense of like, oh, I trusted life, and life proved that it's like inherently like good. And I think you can go very far with that. The thing that I'm now really passionate about is, it seems like there's also a way we can learn to feel, really like go into a deeper level of feeling of ourselves, that by staying in the deeper feeling of ourselves, it still seems a bit like a faith. Yeah, it does feel like it's faith, but it's like really a faith in my immediate feeling that my feeling knows what it needs to do next. It's like I don't know by my thinking what I really need next in my development. I can have ideas about it, but it's like my feeling knows how to unfold itself or how to evolve itself, as long as I like participate and trust and I'm willing to feel even when it's really uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it's more, and what I've discovered is it's like the physical body, because we can get in lots of flow states in circling, and we can feel like, we used to call it the drug state, because it's almost psychedelic when you're, you know, trusting your experience, and you're, you know, someone saying they're angry with you and you're like trusting that they have some intelligence about that. You're not just getting defensive. And it's this kind of this move we can do where we just trust what's coming. But then what feels like my developmental, where my development's taken me, or where the practice has taken me especially, it's just like the very feeling of my physical body. There's often sensations I'm having that I dismiss subtly as like, oh, that's my old injury, or I've always got tension in my left hip. That's just always there. And so I then don't really be aware of it. And actually, I found that these sensations are usually the most important sensations to feel. And they hold so much intelligence.
I've got tension in my left hip. That's a sensation right. Like that. It's a very common one.
Yeah, because I don't. That's funny. I must be picking it up from the field. Yeah. Yeah, and what I just keep finding is like this tension in your hip, like as you be with it, I could imagine it just actually feeling uncomfortable, and even starting to be like, well, I'm feeling it, but nothing's happening. But that's where it'd be like, yeah, what's happening is you're actually seeing your resistance, because you're feeling it, but you're only really feeling it because you want to change it. And that's actually how you're subtly relating to yourself.
So that's exactly what I was just doing as you were saying that.
But then
Sean's really good circling coach, by the way, guys. You're doing it without even knowing.
and but then this cool thing about the simple sensations in our body is that it becomes so intuitive, and yet it's so simple, so connected. Well, and then the last thing I just say, and let's see what happens with you when I say it, but if you start to see, like, you know, you see this subtle resistance that you're like subtly actually just trying to change it, with the kind of nicely sounding I'm being with it. But then as you see that, you're allowing that, and actually that evolves itself, like we're trusting presence or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, our inner intelligence, in seeing that we're trying to make something happen. That trying to make something happen can evolve or dissolve of itself, like it knows what to do, or your body knows what to do with that. And then you start to be with it more genuinely. And often what I'm just seeing is we like trap memories, and we trap strong emotions, and we trap like intuitions, and but especially what I've seen is like memories that we've actually forgotten, or or events in our lives that we didn't realize were as significant as they were because we dissociated from them. And it's amazing how they're being held in these tensions, which we thought were just like our old injury or that we were dismissing, but they turn out to be these like extremely important parts of us that have been really hurt or yeah. That, and when you start to feel that, then the sense of wholeness that's possible, it's like a really deeply embodied inner sense of this wholeness that you've been pointing to. So did any memories come up as I shared that?
There was a feeling of being really lost came up. Like, and it's like kind of showing up with in the present, like linking it to the present of like, do I really know what Sean's talking about? Is this really aligned to me? Like, how could I ever know? Like, the world's just so complicated. Like that narrative came up a bit. And yeah, I feel the sensation shift a bit in my hip as I talk about that. Like, and it's so, yeah, the way you describe the wholeness, something of like, yeah, it feels like I'm starting to access something that's been unconscious, like for however many years, 30 odd years more, I don't know. It's always been here, and then now suddenly it's getting the light of consciousness, and or like it's becoming more alive, and I have no idea what it is. But I also like I feel my pelvis more now, like something feels more secure in me. I feel more manly. I think my voice just dropped a little bit. So there's already like a sense of getting rewards from getting to feel this, as well as it still being a big unknown and like
yeah. And as you share that, this is also, although I wasn't really in the coaching role, it kind of was a little, and it's good example that as you share all that, it's so intimate to hear it, just like to hear about your experience, and also like as a coach, because circling coaching, there is very much room for us to bring our deeper understanding in. We can bring our sense making as very much as an emergent thing, like what just happened now. And because I did dare to bring that, and that's kind of in supporting your exploration, there's obviously a warmth that comes in me, or there is a warmth that comes in me, just being able to participate with you that way. So that's one thing about the coaching. Then there was also something really cool that happened, that when you owned, oh yeah, am I fully aligned with this? And you just, was just sharing yourself. It was really good to hear that, or to feel, because it kind of gave me it's like I don't know, like it's really gentle softening that happens in me, and then it gives me that sense of humbleness. And so by you sharing that, I now feel like I get to feel my humbleness, and now I'm like, oh yeah, like how much do I know what I said as well? And like now I feel more open to, like, there might be more you can show me now, or there might be, this is such a discovery, really. It's not that so yeah, I wanted to point out, just to show these subtle opportunities in the coaching process. it seemed by your kind of noise, it's me revealing that I got touched in that way. Imagine you didn't know that when you said it, and now that's now touching something in you. Maybe not. I want to check that.
It might be. I'm more. I'm kind of letting go into more of a trust state. I'm feeling more humble, more vulnerable, like kind of letting go of needing to try and keep track of what you're saying in a particular way, like linking to Circling Europe or people who listen to this conversation. Like I feel smaller, but in a way that's kind of feels good.
Yeah, that seems resonant with what I was feeling. Yeah,
and in that smallness I feel a bit of my innocence as well, and the child in me, the thing that I've been playing with, which I think will link quite closely to your explorations, yet it's coming from like the opposite end of the polarity or something, is existential kink. And that is, for people who don't know about it, it links to the idea of wholeness, and that's part of why I've got interested in it. And it's quite an extreme view, and that, like, I think most coaches and most therapists and a lot of people would kind of acknowledge that we can be getting in our own way, and that those things can be things that patterns that we've picked up along the way in our life, or based on survival adaptations that we've had to make to fit in. And the existential kink is like, takes it one step further, in that, like, not only are we, like, some of our worst struggles and like the things that we keep hitting up against over and over again that we really want to get beyond, not only do we are they kind of like connected to our wholeness, connected to like these deeper layers in us that are kind of have other ideas than maybe our conscious self. But the idea with existential kink is that we can even be getting off on them, like in a kind of kinky way. And the connection is like, so in NARM, they talk about how our natural life force gets distorted, like you could say like our natural way of being, our essential way of being gets distorted in different ways to fit in with the environment for survival. And you could look at that as a bit like a kink in our hose of aliveness, and that all trauma can be seen in that way in relation to aliveness of like life getting stuck and trapped in particular places, and like this opportunity to go back in and relive that place and re-engage that part of our body and our psyche. And yeah, the idea with existential kink is that we can even be secretly getting off on some of those kinks in our life force and getting a kind of kinky pleasure with it, which is like so extreme, especially from a therapeutic lens, where it's like going so carefully and so slowly with someone, like titrating and pendulating and like being extremely gentle and kind in relation to like real trauma. And then there's this existential kink view, which feels vulnerable to share because of its extremity, but I know there's something in it of like, especially linked to the kind of non-dual aspect of our lives, or the cosmic joke perspective of our lives, where we can really start to notice where we're getting a kinky pleasure from acting out certain things over and over again in a cycle. And paradoxically within that, it's kind of like a deeper surrender to who we really are, and kind of randomness as human beings, and I kind of can't think of the word, but like how eccentric we are, and like just surrendering to the human condition and allowing ourselves to even get pleasure from these things, and in a way that's allowing us to be more complete and more whole. But also in doing that, and in like engaging more deeply with our kinks, the kinks in our life force, and like allowing ourselves to feel the pleasure there, but also the tension or the whatever it is, like allowing that more fuller contact with what's in us is liberating, is like the exact thing that can support the unkinking process. And I've just been playing with that in SASs the last few weeks and in coaching, and it's quite a powerful. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, and you use that in the wrong context, it's abuse. But in the right context, it's with yourself or with someone else. It feels like the latest new paradigm that I'm kind of fascinated to kind of take the gold from and bring into my coaching and circling.
Yeah, I don't. You brought that in with me recently because I was kind of curious about the idea, but I didn't know it that well. And then you did it in the moment, and I was actually sharing something that was hard for me in relationship with you, like sometimes setting boundaries around work, and that touched into deep places in me of, you know, places where my boundaries have been really crossed when I needed them at a very young age, and how that's then shows up in kind of painful sensations and experiences. And as I was sharing that, you brought this view in, and but actually I think there was a flash of a moment of like, are you not taking what I'm saying seriously? But then I actually, like, when you said it could be abusive, I mean, anything is abusive, like if you're like trying to influence someone in a way that you're trying to make them do something they don't want to do, but I don't think, like, especially in a certain context, I actually found it just very kind and a little bit fun.
Yeah.
But what it did to me was, like, it actually made me more okay with myself. So even if it's true, and I didn't know it was definitely true, that, you know, I get pleasure from suppressing my life force and kind of slightly disappearing and becoming a little bit submissive, because there's a pleasure in being, you know, because obviously lots of people who practice domination and submission, a lot of them get a lot of pleasure from submitting. So there's obviously a potential to get pleasure from that. So it gave me a kind of, like, oh, that's a possibility, and an acceptance that if that's the case, that that there's some way that that this difficulty with boundary setting isn't just this kind of, you know, I've got to struggle and be good at this. It's like, no, there's deep things happening here that are very intimate. So yeah, I felt quite alive actually as we explored that. And strangely, like, way more acceptance actually.
Yeah, and it can make light of, in the positive sense of, like, trauma, some of the seriousness around trauma.
Yeah.
And that's the edge, because I like the seriousness of trauma is really real, and the tragedy of trauma is really real, and this perspective I think is really real, and has a huge capacity for healing, as well as accessing pleasure and enjoyment and, like, the absurdity of our life, but in a more, you know, more like a comedy, a divine comedy, and it takes us out of the past and more into the present as well.
Yeah. Well, the divine comedy is more like, well, I experience it as the normal perspective I'm in, where it would be really offensive or, you know, a bit, it's like a bit precious, like, oh, you know, I can't be made fun of in my pain. And there's something very true about that. There is a way that can be really harmful. But then when it's done in this way, which is coming from deep insight, actually, and it's actually not shaming, because I've actually heard the same view, which feels also equally true, that, you know, sometimes, like, when you're in pain, you're acting out of the pain. So say you're like, yeah, I'm freezing with people, but then by freezing, I'm kind of making it difficult for everyone else as well, because, like, they can see that I'm not fully there in some way, and, you know, I'm not functioning fully, so they have to kind of adapt to that, and it can actually have a lot of impact on other people, or someone could do that with anger or any of these stronger emotions. You can use it to kind of and get pleasure or feel power from, like, making life difficult for others.
Right.
But there's something a bit shaming about that, as if it's like a kind of, you know, you're being a bad person who's wanting power in a not nice way.
Yeah.
Whereas this view is a bit more fun. It's just like, oh yeah, there's some pleasure. Yeah, there's some kinky pleasure out of not having to take responsibility and just follow someone else's commands. But I wanted to add, yeah, still got a bit of time my side. The other thing we touched on this today, which is a really good nuance of, like, as a coach, I've always liked this view that we can go as deep with our clients as we've gone in our own journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a real truth to that. But what I saw today is it's a partial truth. But it's an important truth that, you know, if you're working with someone that's really dealing with something like that's, you know, I don't know, a CEO that's got a dilemma of working with 10,000 people, and they've got a really big decision, and you just get the experience of being out of your depth, of, like, really knowing how to support them. There might, yeah, that could be an example where it's just right, you don't really have enough experience of that situation to really serve this person. But then once you do have more experiences, you know, leading and influencing people, and then you can become a more effective coach in that situation. And it's the same if someone's, you know, got a pre-verbal, you know, they experience violence at a pre-verbal level, like, and you don't really have any experience of that, then yeah, you're gonna have difficulty. But what I saw today when we were exploring this is there is some truth to how deep you go in your journey is important. So your practice as a circler and the other practices you do are going to really inform, like, the potential of your coaching. So it's really important to have a committed practice. But on the other side, I think you can get really a long way by trusting actually the process. So if you're just very true to the process, it doesn't matter if you haven't had that pre-verbal trauma experience personally, or you've not led a company with 10,000 employees in it. If you're just trusting the process, that if you show up as yourself and you're compassionate and accepting of where you're at, and then you show that to your client, actually in trusting the process like that, you can still be a very effective coach.
Yeah. I like kind of honoring both sides of that equation.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'd say on that also is, I think a good way to and I found myself do this, but I see it very common in clients and people I've worked with, that there can be a resistance to showing up you know, in terms of showing your work to the world or doing the work you really want to do. And it shows up as like, oh, I should be further along, or I'm not enough yet. I need to do more courses, or I need to do more training, or I need to go deeper into my trauma and resolve these challenges I have. And actually, I don't think that's true. Like, we don't have to be, you know, light years ahead of the people we're working with, and in lots of ways we won't be ahead of them. There'll be ways that they got, you know, more development in certain ways than we will have, but just the fact that we've been circling and practicing circling, going quite a distance with it, I think that's enough just to be a little bit kind of ahead of our clients, to kind of guide them through this process. And yeah, that's really, it's really important to own like the journey we've already been on.
Yeah, well, I had a recent example. Are you finished?
Yeah.
I had a recent example of someone I was leading circling with, who was a super high, amazing CEO, who, from an organizational leadership point of view, has done so much more than I have. But when circling him, it was like I could feel he had been burnt in similar ways to how I'd been burnt along the way. And like, I could feel that he doesn't get to speak his heart very often, or he doesn't get seen in his struggles very often being a CEO. So there was kind of ways I could relate to him of like, oh yeah, we're in the same ballpark, even though like I'm not in his league. But then the thing that I could see was like, he's not used to being seen in these feelings, or going into them and feeling them. And that's where I've had so much experience of going into them in myself, but also going into deep feelings of what's really happening with other people, and how healing that can be, and how empowering that can be. So that was what felt good with that person, was like feeling the humanity, and feeling like what feels like the cross-human potential for us to heal and feel more empowered by getting seen in what's really true for us, or what's really meaningful for us, and our struggles.
Yeah, that reminds me of the vision I've always kind of had in the background with circling, that we're not showing up in the world saying like, do it our way, like we found something, do it our way. And that's what the actual process is like for us as individuals when we circle, that we learn this kind of presence and this way to connect, and then it's like our truer potential or our deeper selves emerge and show us where to go. And it's the same when we're coaching someone, that, you know, this CEO you're working with, you're not going there to show him how to, you know, manage his company better. You're trusting the process of this deep connection and presence will reveal an intelligence that he will then take that and do so much more with that than you could ever have pre-planned.
Mm-hmm. And just being like the circling kind of openness to what this relationship's meant to lead to, or who's meant to learn what from this situation, just that kind of openness around the outcome. Taking that within a coaching context, I think, is another super powerful thing to do, of like, yeah, maybe I'm not meant to coach this person again. Maybe I'm meant to learn a lesson from them and like go back to the drawing board with something, or like it's like that openness, so that every moment is kind of fresh, and like, yeah, we don't know exactly where this is going to go. And that openness ironically seems to lead to the good thing that has us keep being in that way.
Yeah, but I've got like another 5 minutes, and I'd just like to say something more tangible, hopefully, or like a structure that's I'm going to be bringing in and it's going to be something like it's like the 4 dimensions that I see as standing out in the process of and potentials in the process of circling coaching. And one I call like birthing the future, or living your truth. So that's the dimension as a coach. And I know you've got your own framing, so I want to give you a chance to share that after. But it's like, you're helping, or as a coach, you're supporting the client to birth the kind of future that's really coming from a deeper place in them, and is more aligned to that sense of real truth and meaningfulness for their client. And another way to frame that is living their truth. There's just something when we start becoming more truthful as human beings, that it just seems that the kind of world responds, but it's not an easy journey, and that's where we can really support people. And so it's you as a coach knowing, like, having confidence in that process. And then the next part for me is, it's more that other side of circling where we just get more real with ourselves and with life. And it's like, it seems pretty clear that life can be really challenging, and that's actually very normal. And when we can embody that, we see that we can put pressure on ourselves to be more than what we are, and we can judge that we're struggling. When that falls away through the process of circling, it's like we become more aligned and more at ease that life's challenging. And I actually find we resist less the difficulty. And when you resist less what's difficult improves and gets more consciousness and evolves more. But when you have pressure on yourself, and you're not really willing to meet the truth, it's like you actually avoid the difficulties, and then they can get much, much worse. So that's like another aspect of meeting the truth. And then I also see this kind of field of how we help our clients integrate traumatic experiences, or how we can be in that process, I think what happened between me and you was a good example, that actually the best thing we can always do is keep staying in this level of sensation, and not getting too, it's really circling 101 is just emerging as the most important thing. And what we can do with trauma knowledge, it's really important, but we can use it to actually get ahead of the process with our clients, and that will actually more serve their resistance to themselves, actually, and will divert us away when we think we know what should happen, and we move away from presence. But it's really important to have the knowledge there, and then the last dimension is kind of embodiment, and how we can support the clients in a deeper embodiment practice, and embodying the things we're discovering in these kind of powerful hours or 2 hours we have with a client, but making sure we're inspiring something that's greater than just the time we're together with our clients. We're really supporting them into a deeper embodiment in their whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see the main 4.
I like it. It's also been good to talk to you and record a conversation like the good old days. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a new experience to do the audio only, and that feels more truthful for me, but it's a bit more vulnerable than I expected.
Well, don't worry, I'm only going to send it out to 20,000 people later today.
Did you, just before we, wondered if you wanted to say a little, because I remember you were talking about, living your dreams, and I wondered that sort of relates to birthing the future. I don't know, or do you think it's not necessary for now? It's in the curriculum already.
I like it as an aspiration, like this. I link to coaching this potential for us to live our dreams, like being lucky enough to have quite a few moments in the last years of like really feeling like I'm living my dreams, and it kind of not happening by plan as well. That's another quality of it. But at the same time, I guess, I don't know how to interpret that.
Well, the thing I would say is, one thing I've always felt with you, your commitment to to meet the kind of grit of life has really stood out from almost everyone else I know. Sometimes to the point of exasperation for me, but also inspiring, like that you will sometimes spend days feeling into a difficult feeling and coming to terms with maybe a difficult event that's happening in your life, sometimes maybe even a week or two, and you've really done that. But it feels like through that's actually given you access to this more, like suddenly being like, oh, my dreams my life's kind of unfolding like a dream. And so it feels very linked to those two, almost like it's all one dream, really, the struggle and the kind of flow states.
Yeah, I don't know how to make sense of it, but as you were talking, it gave me the realization of how much time I spend in the dark. But I mean a very particular thing in the dark with that, and it's not like the dark in a bad way, but it feels like I'm exploring and researching, and and I don't know how to link that to the other experiences of dreams, and like I kind of trust that you're seeing something I'm maybe not. But darkness, or a quality of darkness that I think is really important, like the unseen, or the
and it's a kind of love, because if something's unseen in us and difficult, the love of staying there to allow it to emerge is that, if it's a part of us, it must have some important wisdom, or it doesn't even matter if it doesn't have wisdom, it's a part of us. So just that love for ourselves, that we want the whole of us to be here, and that then can be surprisingly dreamlike, as that more of that's allowed.
It reminds me of another concept that's kind of important in training of like non-linearity. Like I didn't reach my dreams through a linear method. Feels like a spiraling of some kind, or also just it's a bit like if you see the Buddha on the way, kill him. It also feels a bit like that. Oh, you reached your dreams, great. What about this? I don't. That's a bit cynical, because I think I could take in more, like just with the coaching, like both of us get paid good money to work with clients in this way, and like super interesting clients. We find every human being interesting, and we can fall in love with any human being. And yeah, I'm lit up by the people I'm coaching at the moment, and that I get to do that.
Yeah, and there's an amazing sense of the clients that come at the times they come. It does seem to just, yeah, I just feel grateful for the other people that show up at the times they do, and then we go on these processes that seem very fitting.
And
I was just going to circle back quickly on what you said about if there's a Buddha on the road, kill him. And then you said maybe that's a bit cynical. But I think the truth in that is, or that really feels important to me actually, is we can get images of others, especially like teachers and stuff, as being kind of super Buddha-like, or they're so intelligent and they always meet people so well, and they must have these amazing lives. And then that actually, we're putting them up like that a little bit actually to put ourselves down, or to
kinky.
Look at yeah, it's the pleasure to submit to and then also, yeah, and what comes with that is like, yeah, that my life isn't good because it's not that enlightened life. And then when things start happening that are struggles, it's like that proves that I'm not good. But actually, almost every teacher I've ever met, and I've been lucky to meet quite a few that were heroes for me, they're just very, very human, and they're definitely having struggles. And they're very honest about that as you get to know them. And if anyone's saying that they're not, and that they're just pure enlightenment, maybe I'd be more worried about them. But yeah, so that just felt very important as a part of, trusting ourselves more whenever we, I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's what I took from it.
Yeah.
So should we wrap it up there?
Yeah, there's still something about this, like ascending and descending, and light and dark. I'm still with this sense of me in the darkness, while also knowing how much light I have. And it feels a bit like the whole of circling Europe for us, like how much we've loved leading and loved the people that we've met over the years, and the fact we've got to travel to all these exciting places and lead in different contexts and build these relationships. Like what a blessing it's been, and the light of it. And then like next to it is all the dark of it, like how many challenging things have happened, and like how many painful things have happened in some of our connections, and like all the heartbreak along the way, and the like being blindsided, and like washing up on shore somewhere else, and like where am I now? And like it's just and it's nice to be touching in with you again like this now, kind of 9 years on in circling Europe, and 22 years on in our friendship. It's cool just to still be sharing that journey with you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, what a ride. Way off the map.
Way off the map. Yeah. What's coming these next years, especially with the way the world is right now.
Well, big love.
Yeah. Lots of love. Speak soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Those people who made it to the end.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to share this with you.